All righty, I show 1 minute past the hour, which means it's time for the VertiGIS Studio Road Ahead webinar. We are an international audience. For some of you it is morning, for some of you it is evening. We shall find out, but one thing I am sure of is because of where my time zone lives in the world, for all of you, it is December. So welcome to December and welcome to the VertiGIS Studio Road Ahead webinar. We've got 45 minutes of all kinds of great stuff. I've got a few short demos for you, some sneak peeks of things that are coming, various updates, lots and lots to cover. So let's get started. Last time we did a Road Ahead webinar, I'd shared with you a whole bunch of information specific to VertiGIS Studio and Esri. I think I got a few comments from folks that found that helpful. This time around, I'm doing my more traditional format, which is what are some things that were recently released that are worth mentioning and you may not have seen because it's a lot of different products within VertiGIS Studio and a fairly frequent release cycle. What are the things that are currently in the pipe, very close to being released, and then what are we looking at for some of the future things? So we'll kick it off with the past. These are things that are already available today. So the first thing I wanted to draw your attention to is, because I know there were even some questions in our last Road Ahead webinar around this, VertiGIS Studio products and VertiGIS products in general are ArcGIS Enterprise 11 ready. The post has been up on the community since I think early October, letting you know this and showing you which versions of VertiGIS software were certified against ArcGIS 11. So this is the, I guess, oldest version you can use with ArcGIS 11. Of course, you're welcome to use a newer version than these. So just in case you missed it, hey, ArcGIS Enterprise 11 is good to go. Some other recently released things. Let's talk first about workflow. A few noteworthy things that I wanted to draw attention to over the last couple of releases with workflow. First is, and not everybody does this, but we had a few really interesting use cases with customers and partners where they were trying to run concurrent workflows in Workflow Server or in mobile. So this is kind of like the .NET runtime environment. And it was possible, but not simple. And so we have made some changes to make this much, much easier. If that is something you've attempted in the past and found it not to work, you should give it another try. I think you'll find it works very well now. We've also, in conjunction with colleagues all over the world, been digging more deeply into utility network things, and specifically Workflow added some support to support geodatabase versions. So many of the existing activities around attachments for adding and deleting or querying attachment information have been added to the list of activities that you can specify what version of the geodatabase you are wanting to access. So this is when you've set your feature layers up with version control, and you may want to not always be looking at the most current version. And then the last thing I really wanted to note about workflow, we ran into a few really interesting use cases where almost everything was case insensitive, but there were a few places where workflow was in fact paying attention to the case of field names. And this was causing problems because depending on whether you're accessing your feature server through the enterprise interface or the ArcGIS Online interface, different cases for the same data might come back. And so this was causing some people to struggle building workflows that would work across these platforms. And so we have tidied that up, and you can see a list there of the activities that potentially had problems before with case sensitivity that no longer do. So the main use case here is attribute field name. So those are some recent developments in workflow. Let's talk about some recent developments in VertiGIS Studio Web. So some noteworthy recent development. We did release the update to our add layer UX, adding particularly filter controls. This was probably one of the more frequently requested things. How do I access data outside my own organization? How do I better filter my content from other content? Things like that. The dialog component received an update. It's such a small thing. It would be easy to miss in the release notes, but I really wanted to highlight this because we did have a number of customers who were wanting to use the dialog component on startup of an app to show terms and conditions. And in order to make that work, we had to create a way to require the end user to actually click a button and not just be able to escape out of the dialog or hit X or do some other action that would dismiss that, but to actually say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. And then we did some work around our coordinates configuration service, so you can now actually add additional coordinate systems to your app, and you can also remove unneeded coordinate systems to kind of make it simpler for your end user. So I thought I would briefly show you a couple of these. So let's go over to live software. Here's some live software. So let's pop into WebGIS default, which is a common one I use when demoing. And we will kick it off with, let's start it off with our add layer. So you've always had the ability to add layers from a portal. This is ArcGIS Online or Portal for ArcGIS. So what's changed here is you now have a brand new filter control. This can do sources. So I'm interested, for example, in public content, item type. So maybe I'm only interested in feature layers, and maybe I'm looking for public feature layers that are about trees. So we'll do tree inventory, and you can see there that we've added a tag for that, and that this interface actually queries for a list of those things. And now I have some idea that I'm seeing the first 50 of over 2,000 things. So maybe I also want things that are public. Some days you can type, some days you can't. So now I've got exactly 8 matches. All right, that's super helpful. This interface lets you see these tags. Of course, you can clear them directly from this. And this dialog was also designed so that it works very, very well on mobile devices. If you are running web on a mobile device, these filter controls show up below. So that was a change that I wanted to highlight. The second change was around the coordinates service. So there is now a coordinates service here. And this coordinates service lets you do a number of things. For sure, you can add new coordinate options. So many of our customers, particularly call out Watch Party Australia. Hey guys, look, you are asking for this. But often you want to be able to display data in your application in more than one coordinate system. So this now gives you the ability to actually add your own brand new coordinate options, including transformations. And even if you don't need to do that and you've got a common Web Mercator transformation, you may still want to use this simply because you can come in and say, you know what, I'm really not interested in showing those coordinate systems to my end user. And then in all the interfaces that display a list of coordinate systems, those will no longer show up. So definitely something to pay attention to if you didn't notice it when it came out. And lastly, just on that dialog side of things, very briefly, I'm going to go down to my add layer from file. So I have this configured actually in a dialog. And so I'm going to, you can see right now, I can close this dialog. I can click outside this dialog. I can hit escape and just disable that. And so really what this functionality does is it allows you to come in and turn off the ability to close that dialog in any other way. So if I do that, well, I no longer have an X. I can't click outside. I can't hit escape. I am forced to interact with that dialog either iconically or by clicking a button, and then you can make sure your users are actually interacting with your terms and services and conditions. So those are some recent changes on the website. Why do I have 2 PowerPoints up? That is a great question. All right. Let's talk briefly about mobile. Something that came out in mobile in the last short while that I wanted to draw your attention to is we did add support for the bad ELF GNSS receivers. We had a number of customers who we're using that particular receiver brand. I believe that brings us up to 4 different GNS receiver types that are supported in mobile. And we've also added a number of markup commands. So these are things that you asked for that enable you to do a markup experience within mobile. So you can see the list of commands there. But what I actually want to draw your attention to is this. If you haven't already seen these, tried them, played with them, you can actually go to our try out sample app section of Studio Go, open the Capital City app, and we have integrated into Capital City a workflow that shows you how to use all these commands and operations. So here's the workflow. For example, if we want to do a polygon, you can see it pop up here and it's orange, fill opacity. Let's make this 100 and we'll go ahead and draw a shape. And I'm going to click on the map. Didn't want that, I wanted freehand. Oh well, we'll do it this way. We'll start with a freehand and then we'll turn that off and do a polygon based one. So you can kind of see the view of how that works. There's obviously examples here for text, for lines and whatnot. But what I really want to show you is how do you get to the rest of it. So you can see there's a little help icon here. This is just a quick and easy way. If you actually click through, it will take you to a post created by Cam Carmichael that talks you through the process of how to configure this. Also gives you access to the actual workflows themselves, so you can use those as a starting point for creating your own drawing and sketch experiences. So if you had missed that along the way, I wanted to make sure you knew about it. All right, so that's the past, some most recently released things. Let's talk about things that are imminently about to be released. We'll kick it off with web. So first of all, just a quick public service announcement. If you are a partner or a customer or a service provider who has built custom library components, so you're writing code that's going to run inside VertiGIS Studio Web based on Esri's JavaScript 4.x API, please take a minute and read the community announcement. The most recent update of VertiGIS Studio Web that is about to be released, 5.21, has updated to the latest version of Esri's JavaScript 4.x API. No surprise there, it's 4.24. And Esri has marked for deprecation for quite some time now, several, I think all the way back to 4.20. The fact that their tasks interfaces are going to change to REST, you can read all about it at the community post. Why are we highlighting this? This happens with almost every release of Esri's JavaScript. There's always a few things that change, but in this particular case, we just think it's a significant change. It might address as much as 15% of the surface area of Esri's JavaScript 4.x API, and a lot of the common things you would have done, like I want to do a buffer, I want to run a geoprocessing task, you may have configured those to use the task interface, and if you did, that won't work anymore. So please do take a minute and go have a read. What is coming in the next release of VertiGIS Studio Web? So this is the 5.21 release. We have done the work. It's now in master and ready to go around supporting multi-layer services with add layer. So when I know a couple people even this week were emailing me and asking me about this one, yes, it's there. Yes, it works great. In fact, you can even do more than one service at a time and then sub-pick your layers. So I think we've done a good job on that interface. We have added in this next release the concept of starred results. This is something that we had in the Silverlight viewer, something that we had in the GeoCortex viewer for HTML5, and now it is also part of web. And I'll show you a quick example of that. This is the ability to search or build a list of results that you're interested in across multiple interactions. So you can query, click on the map, star a couple of things, do a search, star a couple of things, do an identify star, a couple of things, and then build up a list of things that you're interested in. Feature details, feature list, and feature summary updates. A common request from a bunch of folks was, hey, we would really like more control over what appears, things like the pop-up if you're trying to use the feature summary as a pop-up. Of course, you're defining most of this in the web map, but you don't always want to see everything that is in the pop-up configuration for the web map. So I'll talk you through a demo of that. And snapping, yes, out-of-the-box snapping is also coming in 5.21. Now, I was having a challenge last night with my virtual private network, so I intended to demo a couple of these live. That did not turn out to be a good idea, so I have screenshots to talk through and a few little recordings to talk through as well. But here we go. We're going to kick it off with starred results. So this is the new starred results functionality within web, and as you can see in almost every interface, whether it is a pop-up interface or a list, you have the ability to star your results. That can be coming from click identifies, it can be coming from multiple different places. You can see things that are already starred are going to show up, and then of course you can add more things. And then we have given you interfaces so that you can easily reload your starred results, and then of course also be able to clear them. So this is by far the preferred way that many customers have asked to interact with result sets, as it were. It's the most common use case. And so we are delighted to be able to provide that. All right, let's talk about some other changes. You have been asking, we have been listening, we have refreshed and made some significant improvements to the result details view within web. So a few things to draw your attention to. First of all, just what used to be the somewhat Tetris puzzly collection of buttons. We have added a number of more configurable options out of the box, and we're really taking our cues from you. The apps we saw you create, most of the time you guys were turning off the textual descriptions so that you could get more buttons on there and so that they look better. But we've given you some control over the style, or you want round or square. You can include the words or not. You can even just go down to short word descriptions if you don't want to use icons. One of the changes that we've made here was the title that you configure and the description. We wanted to make sure they were in fairly close proximity, and our experience, again, from observing the apps that you built, were that you generally only wanted a single row of actions. So we've gone ahead and limited this to a single row. And if you do happen to have a couple of things or you're not have enough space, we'll just let you go back and forth between those options. The other thing to call out here is the attributes display. Again, based on your feedback, the way we were displaying attributes previously, you weren't fond of. Fair enough. Multiple requests and suggestions for a more tabular view of that information. So we've gone ahead and made that change. We have revamped the way external links and file attachments are displayed, just making them a little bit easier to read and a little bit more interactive. And as you can see from the animated part of this, we have also revamped the way we display the related records. Part of that is simply by grouping them. So you used to kind of just get a big mixed list of all related records. Now we are putting them in tabs and we are categorizing them by source, so you can tell the difference between your fire hydrants and your buildings, for example. And so all of those are changes coming in 5.21 that we think you will be very delighted with. But wait, there is so much more on this topic of being able to configure results and result details within web. So the second thing I wanted to highlight for you was that you have the ability now in a new results service to decide whether you want to show fields that have no data. And in my experience, talking with you as customers, some people are adamant that you must show the null fields because you need to know that data is possible. Others are like, just hide them. I don't ever want to see them again. So we're just putting control of that into your hands. and you can now control whether you want that null data to show up in your list of attributes or not. Lastly, one other change we made for related data was we've given you a second option, and actually I'm just going to go back here. You can see here on the screen at the bottom right, a related records display style. The default is just these short links previews that you can click through, but there were use cases where you have large amounts of related data and you actually want to view that data in its entirety in tabular form. So this is those same data links, but now rather than just showing you a little shortcut, you're actually seeing the entire related record all in one tabular form. And because we are using our out-of-the-box results table view for this, you have the ability to filter that view of related records, to reorder them, to remove a few columns, to kind of look at exactly what you are looking for. So that is another change coming to results in VertiGIS Studio Web 5.21. But wait, there's even more, because a number of you also expressed a desire to have more control over what we would call the summary view of a feature. So on the screen right now, you can see an example from a results list, as well as from a map pop-up summary. And there were a lot of use cases where you're like, I really need to pack a bit more information into this view. In an ideal world, a customer can see enough of what they're looking for that they don't have to click through the details. So I want to be able to put a few fields on here or include other things. Now, this was a challenge because of, as you know, a lot of this is configured in the web map pop-up. However, what we've done is we've now given you some new interfaces to be able to accomplish this. So here's an example that I configured where buildings now don't just have a description, but I'm showing a couple of the fields that are configured from the pop-up, not all of them, just a couple of them. And I have chosen to include a couple of external links. You could also include your media here as well. So how did we accomplish this? We accomplished this by introducing this new configuration model called a summary view settings. You have control ultimately for your app over the card height. So you saw that, the middle example here is quite a bit bigger, the cards are, than the default. So you now have control over that. You can allocate more space to those cards. And what you are now able to do is in each of your map service extensions that you configure within Designer, you've got a new option for configuring pop-up content. And the gist of this is, by default, you get all your pop-up content listed that you've defined in your web map, and then you are making interactive decisions about which of those elements you want included in your summary view and which of them you don't want included in your summary view. So for example, I currently, by default, you basically just got the text, but we might want to show some fields. So we come in and drill in and we say we are not interested in these fields, but we do want to show actual use and full address. And so you can basically hone that down to exactly the view that you are looking for. So those are a number of the changes to results and result display details. And I know many of you have been patiently waiting for this. So I look forward to seeing what you do with it. Alrighty, let's talk about VertiGIS Studio Analytics. We started talking about VertiGIS Studio Analytics a couple of years ago. We let you know that we were rebuilding GeoCortex Analytics on a new technology stack. It took a little longer than we thought it would, but we are super excited to announce that VertiGIS Studio Analytics 1.0 release is now available. In fact, it was released yesterday, the last day of November, and it's worth the wait. It's beautiful, it's fast, and it really hits that core value proposition of helping you to understand what your users are doing with your applications and to be able to hone that and optimize that. So I thought I would put this little matrix up just as a quick talking point. Some monitoring servers, so this is like a physical server or a virtual server, but things like memory, CPU, etc. That is supported, as well as monitoring ArcGIS GIS server within ArcGIS Enterprise. That is obviously a big and important thing, monitoring map services, performance, and the like. Enterprise portals and understanding those, ArcGIS Online and understanding those are all there. Unlike GeoCortex Analytics, VertiGIS Studio Analytics has out-of-the-box support today for VertiGIS Studio Web and VertiGIS Studio Mobile. I think I pointed out in a previous Road Ahead webinar that for the mobile use case, that actually includes disconnected information gathering, which we're really excited about. It does not support GeoCortex Essentials or WebOffice, where GeoCortex Analytics did. We still have a little bit of work to do to get the databases stuff working. And really the one to call out here is alarms. That is the very next thing on our list, is to start working on alarms functionality for VertiGIS Studio Analytics. But what it does today, it does very well, and I think you will very much enjoy it. So if you have been eagerly awaiting the release of VertiGIS Studio Analytics, you are welcome to find it, reach out. The documentation is up, the installer is up. You will need to contact your account manager and just say, hey, make sure I've got the right license key, which you are entitled to as a GeoCortex Analytics customer. You are entitled to VertiGIS Studio Analytics. So by all means, ask for that and we'll make sure you've got it. So excited about that. Look forward to feedback and hearing what your first experiences are with this new product. We, as you'll see in the release calendar, have planned a January update release of this, just to make sure that anything that we've somehow missed, we can address quickly, and then more releases in the future. Speaking of the future, hey, what a great segue. Let's talk about some things where we started work on them. I wouldn't call them imminent, so they're not in that present category where these things are largely through QA and ready to go. This is more, hey, what's going on? Give us some updates on some of the other things you've talked about in the past. So let's talk about VertiGIS Studio Printing. Sometime back, we let you know that we were working on a new technology engine, a behind-the-scenes engine that actually does the generation of the actual map content in a print. And I thought I would give you a quick update on this. The work on that engine is largely complete, so we're excited about that. Our first PRs or pull requests, if you're a developer, are now under review. So the integration work of bringing that engine back into VertiGIS Studio Printing has begun. It's going to take a little bit of time, but nevertheless, rest assured, like, there is movement here and we are making progress. So for us, that was a big milestone for beginning that integration work. And I think I've mentioned this in the past, but just in case I haven't, once this engine is out, we will also be making it's in some ways a small change. It affects only the generation of the map images and reports, but if your reports are primarily about generating map images with some additional information, this will be a significant improvement for you. So do stay tuned. We will absolutely keep you up to date as we are better able to predict exactly when this is going to come out, but it is definitely making progress. Let's talk about search, VertiGIS Studio Search, which is another product that we've touched on from time to time over the last year. So this is fast suggestion-based search experiences on Esri spatial data. This one similarly is largely code complete. The remaining work on this product is packaging, deployment, release readiness, finalizing our SaaS environment, making sure the on-prem installer gets a bit more testing in a few different environments, but it is largely code complete, and the current intent and forecast is that we should have this to you in January of 2023. So definitely keep an eye open for VertiGIS Studio Search. What's coming on the website? I've already spoken to you mostly, I think, about the right-hand side of this, so snapping star results, extended configuration options for feature details, feature list, and feature summary, the add multi-layer services, support for subtype group layers. I did not specifically speak to. This is a specific new thing that Esri has done as part of the utility network. I won't get into the details of it, but it's just a different way of doing subtypes that we needed to make sure worked well with web. So what's in progress? Data linking is so very close to being done, but wasn't done enough to make 521. We've got more work planned on snapping, so there's going to be some additional extensions to the out-of-the-box snapping experience. We've broken this into two pieces on purpose. Many of you are just looking for, the basic out-of-the-box snapping. Hey, Cam, let's get that snapping thing delivered. Why don't I have snapping yet? That stuff. And then there are some more advanced use cases around validation rules and fine-grained control over sketch visuals to give feedback to users as they're snapping in some of the more enterprisey, very applied methodologies around editing. So that one is coming. The query tool, filter tool, yes, we are working on it. And the project sharing system, we have a vision for. It still needs to get picked up and actually started. We're also going to be doing some work very soon, or I guess it's already started, on being able to edit related tables, which is something that you can't currently do in web. That wasn't necessarily intentional. We did want you to be able to edit your data in related tables. So there's a little bit of work for us to do there. So that gives you a snapshot. Of course, there are tons of other smaller things, bug fixes, small improvements, but that's a pretty good view of what is coming in web. And last but certainly not least, I thought I'd give you an update on the product release calendar. No big surprises here. I don't think for most of you. What you are seeing is a pretty standard pattern. So things like reporting and printing and web and mobile are kind of an every 2 months pattern. That's going to continue throughout next year. So what should I draw attention to? Well, you can see VertiGIS Studio Search intended for a 1.0 GA in January. We spoke to that. You can see the 1.0 version of analytics up top there, November. And you can see that's probably worth a mention. January 1.1, as I said, just to address anything that in the immediate comes up. And then the 1.2 release in May is our intent to have the alarms functionality available there. You're not going to see a lot of chatter about analytics, just if you're wondering, until that 1.2 release. That 1.2 release is the part where you're going to start seeing webinars and marketing material and all kinds of launch-related activities for us to really beat the drum and talk about analytics for new customers that don't have it today. So it's released. The official marketing launch will be mid next year. And I think that is the vast majority of the material that I wanted to cover today. I'm going to pop open and see if I have any questions. Give me 1 second to get my interfaces in order. So yeah, good question. Any update on making the new mobile app selector the default? That is a great question. I will get back to you. I'll find out from the product manager. I know the intent is to make that one the default. I just don't know about the timing of it, which is what you're asking. Just keep reading. Yep, lots of couple questions here at least around VertiGIS Studio workflow and mobile. So if you've never built a VertiGIS Studio workflow to run on mobile, it's more work. than it is building a VertiGIS Studio workflow to run in Web or Experience Builder. And we have chipped away at this problem over time, added some debugging and some better logging and different ways of doing this. But the question is, hey, what about a sandbox or an emulator? We are still discussing that. We would love to be able to do it. It's certainly still an active part of our day-to-day conversations within the Victoria office. Let's see, can we still use the pop-ups from ArcGIS Online and then add a summary view, or is it all now done in VertiGIS Studio Web? So great question, thanks for asking, Ruth. The answer is no, you do still configure your pop-ups in ArcGIS Online. That pop-up definition in your web map or from your portal, doesn't have to be ArcGIS Online, but that pop-up definition in your web map is what is used for the feature details, the full feature details. And then you can select or configure a subset of that pop-up definition as your new summary view. Question about licensing. So does GeoCortex Analytics licensing translate to VertiGIS Studio Analytics? Short answer is yes. If you are an existing licensee of GeoCortex Analytics, you are entitled to a license of VertiGIS Studio Analytics. I will go back to that last timeline slide. Let me pull that up and see if I can leave that up on the screen while I'm answering questions. Query filter tool, yeah, did I miss it? Well, I didn't show it to you. It is in progress. It's not in our 5.21 release. So it is still coming, but it's not yet in the next release. And what else have we got here? Yeah, okay, this is a good question. Thanks, Nelson, for asking it. You know, GeoCortex Analytics versus VertiGIS Studio Analytics, like, is there a migration path? Short answer is no, there is not. It is a totally different data model, a totally different data storage technology, and we're actually also looking at different products potentially as well, because GeoCortex Analytics obviously did not do web and mobile, whereas the new one does. So it would have been lovely, but it was not a realistic proposition. And then, yeah, Melissa, so yeah, going to be a common question. Hey, it sounds like VertiGIS Studio Analytics. Oh, am I still here? All right. Well, hopefully you can still hear me. My laptop is doing something very exciting while I'm presenting. So I have no idea what just happened. But I'll answer the last couple of questions and then I'll sign off and answer anything that isn't answered by email. So are we planning to support GeoCortex Essentials or WebOffice inside of VertiGIS Studio Analytics? The short answer is no. We wrestled with it. We knew it would be a popular thing if we could do it. We have some other, what we believe to be significantly higher value things planned. Let's see here. I think I'm gonna call it there because I really have no idea what just happened with my laptop. And I just want to say thanks, guys. I know you have a choice in how you spend your time. I appreciate you spending some time with me. I hope that was informative. And if I did not get to your questions, I will get to them very shortly by email. Thank you all. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon.